Hello everyone, my name is Martina Abdulshahid and for my project I'm doing video games and disability. World of video games. It is not a surprise that the video game industry has been growing in the past few decades. In the United States, a study shows that in 2004, profit off of video games exceeded $7.3 billion. This is a great indication that there is a growing user population. It is worth mentioning that 18.6% of US population ages 16 to 64 have some form of disability and that 2.76% have visible impairment. Therefore, it makes sense that a portion of video game users would be people with disabilities. Gamers with disability have a wide range of disabilities, including visual, auditory, mobility, and cognitive disabilities. What is the traditional use of video games for people with disabilities? Studies When studies examine the role of video games in the world of disability, they tend to look at the therapeutic value that gaming offers people with disabilities. There are studies showing the impact of gaming on the lives of children and adolescents with a wide range of disorders. For example, they focus on how video games can improve hand and elbow strength. It could be used for respiratory muscle training also, as well as a form of distraction for pain. Distraction from pain. For example, a study showed how students in chemotherapy treatment needed less painkillers when they played video games during treatment. They also focus on how video games can be beneficial for neurodivergent individuals as well as attention deficit disorders. This is all great. However, there is a big problem with only considering the therapeutic value of video games. Because in fact, disabled gamers play video games for reasons beyond their therapeutic role. Studies have shown that gamers have other reasons to play video games. For instance, a study by Beston et al. In 2018 shows that many disabled gamers play for fun, for relaxation, to challenge each others and themselves, to be part of the community, to socialize with others, to help them with strength and mental health management, just like any other players. So, what is the first problem in video games? Even though gamers with disability want the same things like non-disabled gamers, such as playing for fun, like I mentioned earlier, they're not offered the same opportunities to play video games. This has to do with the fact that video games are designed to fit one type of users, and that is able-bodied individuals. Therefore, video games are not accessible for people with disabilities because of things like hand controllers with multiple buttons, etc. Also, a study showed that disabled gamers do not only have hard time playing the games, but also have hard time buying them, as most games lack or have limited information about their accessibility features. The second problem we face in the video game industry is gender. Video games are male dominated. A study done in 2018 shows that males make up 85.6% of hardcore video game uh, video game users, while females are only 42.7% of the users. The author mentioned how this statistics is in no way an indication about the level of performance or abilities of both sexes. But because of both sexes, because actually they showed that males and females tend to perform at the same level if they receive the same amount of time of training. So why is it that there is less female gamers in hardcore video games than males? The answer is because female gamers experience harassment and discrimination while competing, as well as the fact that they tend to be paid less than their male counterparts, thus making competing in esports not worth it. Lastly, the reason why discrimination and harassment against women are so prevalent in video games has to do with the fact that most female characters are sexualized in video games. It is worth noting that when I say hardcore video games, I'm using the same definition mentioned in the Roswell Cap et al. Paper, which define hardcore video games as the traditional video games, such as fighting and shooters game, while casual games are mobile games such as Pokemon Go. So, what can video game industry do? In order to better the video game industry, there are 4 steps to take. First is to provide a platform for disabled users to express their concerns and needs, and allow them to take part of the designing process to ensure accessibility of games from the beginning. Second, video game industry need to invest money in research to find ways to integrate technology and technological advancement. In order to research video games accurately, researchers need to examine the role of video games from a lens of different disciplines, such as scientific, cognitive, psychological lenses. Lastly, technology advancement is essential because it levels up the playing field for users. Technology helps us recognize the difference between disability and impairment, because having accessible devices allow us to break down those divide between able-bodied and disabled gamers. During my research, I found few examples that demonstrate the possibility of developing accessible video games. First is a prototype video game called Auto Adosi that was created in MIT, and it was designed to fit all users regardless of their eyesight. They used a variety of control schemes that relied on audio rather than visuals, like sound cues. Another study worked with cerebral palsy patients to create a video game that required the least amount of motor skills. The game included things like single button controllers, sweeping strategies, sliders, and circular meters that was all controlled by one button. Lastly, another study mentioned how games like Half-Life 2, Terraformers, and 535 Ferrari Challenge are all accessible to some degree because they have closed captions, single switch controllers, and compass and keys. So yes, accessible videos are very possible. So why is this very important? Inaccessible video games further create this divide between the able-bodied and disabled gamers, as well as between sexes. Like Kirsty, my colleague, mentioned, video games play a big role in childhood development, and thus, when kids see women are treated a certain way in video games and that there is a few disabled players, this lack of representation will affect how they view certain people outside of the video game world. Thus, changes are needed. Thank you.